you, baby. So I stand up and speak my mind. Oh. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. My appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 oh,
Okay, this is great. Hello. It should work. Is it very low? No, hang on, that must be my face. Hello. How do we make this work? Hello? Hello? Oh, morning. Good morning, Sam Humphreys. All right. Everyone good? Let's press the button at the back. Are we good? Are we live? We're streaming. We're on the internets. All right. Good morning, BSides Las Vegas. Hang on, I've got a script. So, good morning/afternoon. And welcome to BSides Las Vegas. Proving ground? Underground? We're proving ground this morning, I feel. With something. Okay. Welcome. Do you want to come and grab a seat? We are live on the internet. Please keep your clothes on. Please, really do that. It's early and I've only just eaten. Okay, so we're opening proceedings today with a man who is a pun. Not actually a pun, it's a pun. You're a man that's
I'm a
pun.
person.
Yes. Hey, I was going to make up a fun fact about Ian Deason, but you are the fun fact.
I'm already fun, so...
You are very fun. You're coming a little bit to the mic, just a little bit. Then, cool. So your talk is... Well, it's on the screen, but for those of you who'd like me to read it, the birds, the bees, and the CVEs. So, quick couple of things. Got to thank the sponsors, because they're amazing. Diamond sponsor, Adobe. Gold sponsors, Prisma Cloud, Semgrep, Blue Cat, Plectrax, Toyota, Dr. One. I was only supposed to say 3 of these, but thank you to all of them. It's their support, along with the other sponsors, donors, and volunteers, that make this event possible. Please turn your phones off. It's just kind of polite. And we're not underground, so I think you can take photos. You're right with photos? But please just don't take photos of random people without asking them. Ian, are you good to go, my friend? Excellent.
Good to go.
Over to you.
All right, thank you so much for that fantastic introduction. So again, the title of my talk is The Birds, the Bees, and the CVEs, or Understanding Critical Vulnerabilities to Critical Infrastructure. My name is Ian Deason, so I'm with the United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Specifically, why this is for the birds, the bees, and the CVEs is because when a security researcher and a product security team love or hate each other that much, that is how a CVE is born. You may be noticing throughout my presentation there are many, many stork images where government discloses vulnerabilities? Just quick, raise a hand. Bueller, yep. So we can't use it. All right,
The answer is yes, so you can't use them anymore. Who just said that and was right?
And just one more, just one more.
Who was that?
Yep.
It was you.
Yeah, so that's actually another way. So if you can be able to get a lovely sticker package, thank you so much.
Who was that? That was you. There you go. Merry Christmas.
So one thing that's important on why we're trying to, so my take as well, is one of the reasons why we want to make sure that so Josh Corman's talked about Presidential Policy Directive 21 a little bit. These are some of the authorities that we have to be able to work with in critical infrastructure and federal government on how we're able to manage the risk and strengthen the resilience of nations' infrastructure. We're able to reduce vulnerabilities and be able to hasten response. So I'm going to talk a little bit specifically within the context of vulnerability disclosure on how we're able to hasten that response. So there's different ISO standards. So this is a bird's eye view, if you will, of some of how we are able to conduct our processes. There's ISO standards behind this. The CERT Coordination Center has written a fantastic guide, but this is a very quick and dirty for those folks that might not have heard this before. So the first phase is this is where there's going to be the vulnerability that's discovered, whether it's by accident, whether it's through research. Either way, that information is there. There's some sort of weakness to that particular software or hardware that's documented and is shared. So that would be where we'd go into the coordinated disclosure phase. And at that point, there's a validation of that vulnerability. Whether one researcher finds it in an isolated environment, needs to go to that product security team to make sure that, yes, they are seeing what is true. Yes, this is truly a vulnerability. One of the things behind that coordination as well is a lot of times it's not a handshake. A lot of times people are reaching out with a hand and they're getting threatened with a lawsuit. So this is a little bit of a reality. Some of what CISA does in our mission is we are able to be a third-party vulnerability disclosure entity. What that means is if people need help, we are able to assist. And one thing as well, specifically within this phase, is the timeline can vary drastically, where some of the cases I've specifically supported have had timelines of about a year to 2 years, where some are within 30 days. So ultimately, once there's some sort of agreement between the two entities or three entities, there's going to be some sort of patch or mitigation phase. So a patch, depending on the system, so if we're talking critical infrastructure control systems, that patch cycle is going to take a little bit longer because they're not going to be having on a rolling basis. Some patch cycles are happening quarterly. Sometimes you need to be able to bring staff on site. Some of these systems are underwater. Some of them are in outer space. So it's really, you have to be able to do a little bit more coordination. You have to prepare a little bit better. Also, when it comes to the mitigation phase, not all patches will be a mitigation. Some mitigations are destroy the device, buy a new one. The firmware is broken. So there's other things people need to understand. And then finally, for the last phase, this is something that this is where we become instrumental, is where we're using our megaphone and we're able to get the word out. We are able to get the word out to people that might not have access to a threat intel platform. We're able to get that information out to people that need to understand the risk of what their products are, so they can be able to make those decisions to how to be able to best safeguard their communities, how to best be able to safeguard their enterprise. Whatever type of operation they are trying to have, we're there to be able to support them. One of my takes when it comes to the whole idea of coordinated vulnerability disclosure, there's a sense where there is coordination involved with with all of them, but not all of them are organized. So we try to make sure that we're bringing that reasonableness and that organization that it needs. So a little bit high level on the process, but like, why does this become so difficult? So that was a pretty easy, well, it wasn't really a flow chart, but it's very, why does this become so difficult? And why does this become so critical, where I want you to kind of think of criticality, not necessarily as whether something can be remotely exploited, whether it's a CVSS score of a 10, but think of criticality as critical thinking. How much time do you need to think about these problems? How much creative thinking do you need to be able to do when you're tackling some of these problems? Because one of the things I'm going to be doing is there are 5 different examples that I'm going to be sharing with you. And in each example, I'm going to tell you the fact that you can't really have a set playbook for everything. You need to be able to be creative, and you have to be able to think on the fly. All right, so I'm going to have a quick example of what if there is a vulnerability that gets shared with you and it's literally everywhere. So this was an advisory that we released about a year and a half ago. When we first received this report, the idea behind it was this was going to affect billions of different devices. So this is going to be affecting different real-time operating systems, or RTOSs, which are used in cyber physical systems. Some of these products you can see right here, or can't really see, but some of the products were products made and maintained by Amazon, which one of the largest companies on the planet, where others were smaller projects managed by 1 to 2 people. And this becomes very difficult because if you're thinking of a specific vulnerability that affects a memory allocation function in this number of operating systems, are we going to be targeting that operating system during the mitigation and patching phase? You have to be targeting where those actual products are placed. You have to be able to work downstream. So when we started our coordination, we contacted the vendors of these different technologies. Not all of them were based in the United States. They were all across the world. And it became really clear that there was a lack of supply chain visibility that really came behind this. Because what happens is, if you have this small RTOS that is put into a smaller component, which then gets integrated into a larger product, which then gets sold to a system integrator that will create an HVAC unit, or something that gets integrated into a submarine, that gets sold, and then there's a maintenance contract that's put on top of that. So there's layers and layers and layers of obfuscation of where you're trying to understand and enumerate what the problem is behind one vulnerability. It becomes near impossible, where not all of these things are going to be IP-based. You can't search on Shodan for some of these things because a littoral ship isn't necessarily going to have this type of, it's not going to be able to show this. There is market data that you can purchase, but unfortunately, it tends to be really expensive. And if you're trying to be able to just simply understand what the impact of the vulnerability is, it can take lots of time, effort, and a lot of thinking. This specific case actually took us over a year from the moment that we received the case to the moment that it went public. And one of the things behind it where people start to get a little bit, when it's starting to affect OT, IoT, industrial, medical, and enterprise networks, when it is so many different devices, it gets very difficult to understand what it works with. Specifically at CISA, we are working with initiatives within SBOM and another initiative called VEX to kind of help with some of these issues. So I'm not going to get into that within this talk, but there are very smart individuals we have at our organization that can speak to that. Second one I'm going to bring up is, what if a vulnerability specifically gets attention? So in this case, this is another advisory we wrote for a product called the MyCODAS MV7200, which is a GPS tracker. So this particular GPS tracker is an aftermarket automotive part that you're able to put into your car, and you can be able to track some fuel, you can track where the car is, it gets integrated within the greater vehicle itself. when we first received this case, didn't see it was bad, but the use case behind it, there wasn't the proof of concept available at a specific car. So it wasn't going to be at the level of other particular car hacks that we've seen where they're able to physically stop a car driving on the road. However, this got a little bit more spun up when the Associated Press picked it up. So what this means for those folks that that have not seen this before, when the Associated Press acts as a larger seed where smaller news outlets can be able to take the information behind it. What specifically happened with this one, and you might be able to see with the title of researchers, Chinese-made GPS trackers are highly vulnerable, that's not going to be telling the whole story behind what is actually capable of this vulnerability. They're seeing the fact that there is another country that is able to hack into GPS systems. One of the things I've specifically learned with this case is the fact that there is many times security research companies, and this isn't for any of them, for all of them, but they're able to hire PR firms to be able to do media pushes. And this is where there's this context behind where a vulnerability tends to get more attention if it's able to get more clicks. So that's just an interesting way to be able to take where the fantastic research is being done, but sometimes that message becomes a little bit different. And specifically with this one, I did receive lots of different questions from private industry and other parts of government to say, how many cars can be hacked right now? Which I was not able to answer. All right, here's another one which we heard a little bit yesterday. What if there's a vulnerability within medical devices? So this can be touchy for some people. So this was a medical advisory. I don't know how many people have heard of the Hamilton T1. Some people know what this is because this is a ventilator. Another thing I want to show is the date is February 16th, 2021, which was right in the middle of the pandemic. So again, this is a vulnerability that if you look at, CVSS, take it or leave it. However, a very, very low, not a very critical vulnerability, but the fact that this was a vulnerability affecting ventilators during the pandemic, where there's supply chain shortages and it's a literal physical harm type of element behind it, people are a little bit more cautious of these type of vulnerabilities. So this was something we did get a little bit more questions on just based off of the type of technology and how it was affected. One of the things that we have to be able to help with these types of vulnerabilities is we do have a memorandum of understanding in place with our partners at the Food and Drug Administration, also within the US federal government, where we are able to share our vulnerabilities before they're public with the people that know how to fix them. So what that means is they have different capabilities, whether it's cardiologists, whether it's other people that can test these medical devices, which are meant to treat or diagnose diseases or injuries. They're able to go in and give that proper patient safety impact that we can't be able to do because I don't have a medical background. I'm not the best person to be able to make that assessment. All right, another vulnerability that we have is what if it's affecting an open standard? So this was I had to look up this vulnerability before I took this case. So the object management group has something called the distributed data systems, so this is a middleware component that's going to be used to handle the reliability of control systems over wide distances. So it's just kind of a way to link different architectures. So it's a little bit different because there's already this idea of different locations, and this is an open standard. How do you be able to fix something when you're not telling one manufacturer, you're not telling one software developer, here's the bug, how do you fix it? You have to talk to consortium. And people have been working on this standard for years to be able to build other technologies. So we did what we did. We ended up writing an advisory behind it. But one of the secondary impacts behind this was not only did it affect multiple different technologies, but the fact that if you did a very quick online search, you could see that there's very, very highly critical pieces of critical infrastructure whether it is a large dam that's up in the United States, or the fact that the International Space Station happens to be using this type of technology. So this is going back to this idea of, even if this is a very niche technology only a few people understand, the fact that it's used in very highly critical systems is going to give this a little bit more attention. And so as my last example, so like gave different examples of the news, we've given different examples, but what if it all happens all at once with exploitation? So yeah, we have that one. We have Log4Shell that happened, which for many, many instances, not only is it critical on the fact that it was mass exploitation affecting all realms of enterprise as well as critical infrastructure, this also happened during the holiday season where many people happen to have time off. This is also during the surge of Omicron virus, or the Omicron variant of COVID, which also hindered teams. This was also used in open source, which just also made it difficult. But I will say, after working with several different teams on the response effort, it was a fantastic job, and there's certainly a lot of lessons learned. So we've learned a little bit now. So vulnerabilities can really be anywhere. They can affect up to billions of devices. So one CVE could be up to like billions. The media can be able to give attention to things that might normally not have gotten that same attention. The public can be very sensitive to medical devices or things that they understand, such as cars, vehicles, things that they know, tangible items you know how to express harm. Standards can really, really increase the amount of complexity when it comes to response, and it all can happen at once. So what are some things that we can be able to do to help? So I'm going to talk about 3 different strategies here, and some of these things were discussed yesterday, where you can be able to add a vulnerability disclosure policy. You can either become a CVE numbering authority, or you can be able to have kind of tailor-made vulnerability response processes. So if you do make products, so if you are making code that's being sold, one of the things that we highly do recommend is that you become a CVE numbering authority. So what that's going to do is that's going to be able to allow you to assign your own CVE IDs. It's going to also allow you to be able to tailor what your language is, so that way when you're trying to be able to own that vulnerability information, own the rhetoric behind it, this is the first step. They do have a few different barriers to entries of making sure that you have that you're showing your publicly facing vulnerability information, which already is something we're already wanting people to do. And it also is showing the fact that you have a vulnerability disclosure policy allowing good faith researchers to reach out, to be able to provide these services to the company, because oftentimes if it's not explicitly known, organizations and researchers reach out to us to be able to serve as that intermediary. CISA, we are able to help with that. Julia's in the audience as well, so she can also be able to assist you if you have more questions on that. But also something that I had highlighted earlier, if you do have a business, have a vulnerability disclosure policy, because that's going to be one of those things to allow good faith researchers to allow this work to be done. If you do have those website misconfigurations, it's going to be more helpful to have people reaching out people are going to be more willing to work with you if they know that they have that there, rather than what the byproduct is, where if there's some sort of exploitation that can happen. That is something also we can be able to help you with at CISA. And also, if you do have vulnerability response within your vulnerability management program, have different plans, whether you're receiving a pre-disclosure vulnerability, whether you're receiving a 0-day, whether if something is exploited, have different plans and playbooks for each. So one of the things behind it is think about driving what the consequences-based analysis is. So if you do have those cyber physical systems, if you do have medical within your networks, think about what those worst case scenarios could be. Think about how, if there was the adversary that did breach your network, what are those different things you could be able to do? Brainstorm those type of ideas, write them down, and then think about them and be able to make risk-based decisions when that happens. But ultimately, one of the things I want people to understand is the fact that not every vulnerability is the same. And you should be prepared because there's a huge data management problem behind vulnerabilities. And we, at CISA, we do have the known exploit vulnerabilities catalog to be able to help with kind of that data management problem. But there is understanding the depth and breadth of different systems and the different, as there is an interoperability of cyber and physical systems, just have a very good idea of how things can be affecting other processes. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this seems daunting. We can help. Yes, those are two storks giving a high five. There's an email there if you want to reach out. We're definitely able to reach out, or feel free to reach out afterwards. Also, for those of you in the audience, we are actively hiring. So this is just a pitch. If you can be able to take a picture, we have specific job announcements for Black Hat, DEF CON, and BSides, so feel free to check that out. But yeah, that is all that I have. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the Proving Grounds. Thank you to my mentor, Mainframe. Thank you for the organization for bringing me out here. And hopefully everyone was able to take something back with them, bring it to your organization. But thank you again. Well, thank you all.
No? Well, there we are. Hello. That was amazing. Really good. And excellent keeping to time as well. So not that it's up to me, but I think you can come back at some point. It was so good. Awesome. One more round of applause, please, because that was awesome. All right, we don't have time for questions, so unfortunately, we need to get the new speaker on. But will you be hiding somewhere?
Yeah, I'll be outside. If people have more stickers, I have more stickers if you'd like stickers. But if you have questions about anything, I'll be outside just for next while.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for.
from Las Vegas. All right. Good morning / afternoon. Oh, no, it's morning. Welcome to BSides Vegas. This is still proving ground. If you were here from before, you'll know that. And if you're new to the room, welcome. So, second up on the track today, we have Tiago Borgini, who is going to be, there's his big title on the screen, Brazilian DeepWeb. I'm very excited for this. It's something I know nothing about, so it's going to be great. Before we get going, quick thing, we need to thank the sponsors, because sponsors bring the money. So, we'd like to thank our sponsors, especially our diamond sponsor, Adobe, and our gold sponsors. Choose 3. I'll do all of them because I like sponsors. Prisma Cloud, Semgret, Blue Cat, PlexTrack, Toyota, Conductor One. It's their support, along with our other sponsors, donors, and volunteers, that make this possible. Tiago, my friend, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you so much. My first time presentation in BSides, the first time presentation in English. It's my natural language is Portuguese, because I many words lost during the presentation. But I talked about how to Brazilian guys using OPSEC for obfuscating the IP address or trackings for cyber investigators. Okay. But my first name is Tiago Borgini. Today I head of cyber threat intelligence in Brazilian company. The name is Exer. Today, I'm one guy for organizes Security BSides in São Paulo. I invited all for participate in the next year. Speaker in many events in Brazil and other countries, and professor for postgraduate courses in Brazil. But I talking because the cybercrime and not about me. What challenges the cybercrime in 2 years, I believe in the next years? Okay, the first problem is related to the cyber enforcement tracking the cyber criminals in the transnational, because the one guy have in Brazilian, another guy saying that they spend in the Russian, another guy creating the provider in USA, the crime unique for congruate the problem. Cybercrime today using the emergent technologies. In Brazil, it's most common guys using AI for create a deep fake for bypass self-recognizes, bypass onboarding, bank accounts, and bypass 2FA authentications. And 5G's networking is another big problem. Another problem recognizing the investigate this cybercrime is different because the traditional investigators. The law enforcement I need learning again because the one guy do not work in the same time as in the cyberspace. The cybercrime working different. Okay, after the COVID pandemic, I talk in the all crime working in the home office, in same the all peoples. And another problem, because it's basically in Brazil, the law enforcement agents not having peoples, not having investment, not having technology. It's a big problem. I think I talking one guy, cyber investigate, the cyber investigator do not identify the ISP related to the IP address, for example. Hey, what the law enforcement do not identify one IP address is very easy, but one problem in Brazil. And then another problem established the public sector and private sector join for cooperating and share information related to cybercrime, because today it's very necessary. The current scenarios involve the data breach attacks, involve attacking focusing the financial transactions. Today, attackers, threat actors, can know the business and the application. For me, it's very important information because this knowledge creating a most sophisticated attacks, because not using just a technology. The threat actor can know the business, the process, our role is involved in the financial transaction. Is creating the many things idea for creating our many types of fraud scams. And in Brazilian, is very abusive, uses social engineer. In technical, in Brazilian, the guys is very good, low. For example, one Brazilian malware is most common 200 megabytes. It's like as a service pack for analyze. But the social engineering involved in the all processes is very complex. Involve a fake number, involve a fake SMS, a fake WhatsApp message, fake website for creating the all story for conduce the victim the crime. Then Brazilian is most common the guys creating the malware focused in the IRP, CRM, and other applications like as SAP, Salesforce, anything. And not like malware created for Windows or Linux or Mac OS, just malware created for attacker the application. It's a very important information. But what the TTP attacks? Many people think that threat actors work in only DeepWeb, but in Brazil it's very, very different because the most common threat actor focus in the cyber crime and the fraud scams, talking about just subject in the WhatsApp, Telegram, TikTok, the most common, Instagram, and all social medias. For example, my company collects today more or less 3 million messages WhatsApp per day. Only cyber fraud groups. It's a very, very volumetric data. Just samples. The first, because the fraud scan is right in the Portuguese, but the first screenshot, highlight the fraud focus on the Coca-Cola. If the people send it to message to one peoples, the Coca-Cola send the guy one refrigerator. Whoa. What? What the hell? And the second example is that many common in Brazil. The guy got the WhatsApp picture, create a fake number, and send a message to many contacts. Hey, mother, I changed my number. It's my new phone number. How are you? I locked my account banking. I need to pay one bill, or I need to pay my friend. Is possible you create a financial transaction for me? Send you 100 reals. Many people just trust in the message. Do not check if the real number is correct, or hey, my daddy, you change your phone or not? I talk for my students, and many people lost the smartphone is a phone. Hey, call the guy. Hey, you change your phone or not? But in Brazil, it's most common that people, yes, send me a picture, it's okay. Trusty, very good. Another problem, sorry, there's lots of words. WhatsApp is cybercriminals talk about the cybercrime in many WhatsApp groups. It's very common. In WhatsApp groups, it's very common you buy or sell anything. Credentials, fake documents, fake bills, scams for bypass 2FA authentication. In Brazil, it's common using the Orange account banking, like as a fake account banking used for money laundering. One guy created a bank account just for money laundering. It's a big problem in Brazil because all people create is a business. One guy buy, for example, one people in dollars, $200 for people creating in the 10 banks a same account. But these accounts just used for money laundering. And it's reinforced the partnership between the private sector and the public sector for sharing information. And the second slides, for example, you buy the drive licensing, fake drive licensing, fake and financial transaction bill, fake credit card, and anything, drugs, guns, anything, peoples. Credit cards are basic information, so not interesting. All day, I see many messages such like as, and what protection this guy uses, I think. Using the OPSEC, using Tor, VPN, proxies, cloud computer, or they're not using nothing. The first experiment, I have 3 questions for response to that. The first question, if the OPSEC is different between the WhatsApp guy, Telegram guy, or Discord guy. Is having OPSEC difference between the platform or the same? Is the first question. Second question, the threat actor type. If the threat actor focuses on the malware development, have what type of sec? A guy creating a phishing scan. What the OPSEC the guy? It's a second question. And how many threat actors use the OPSEC, and what most common OPSEC used for all guys? I started my research focused in Brazilian groups, and the strategy involved the web bug link. All can know web bug? IP tracker? Okay. I started a conversation, this guy selling fake money. Okay. If you buy 100, you receive 1,000 in the paper money. I talked to this guy, hey, I need to buy your money, but your money is trust or not? Because I buy the another guy is not trust. See, I'm a fake money I buy. I send it to guy one link. After guy just clicking the link, I collect all information of the guy. For example, IP address, geolocation IP, user agent, operation system, anything. For my surprise, this guy not using VPN, not using proxy, Tor, relay, hosting, anything. Oh, good. It's very good. It's possible to identify the system operation, browser, anything. Just GeoIP is related only the IP address, okay? Not a GPS, just a GeoIP. Okay, in Brazil is have a financial transaction. The name is PIX, like as a instant transaction financial. I believe in the USA have the same technology, but another name. And the PIX is possible. I send the money to people using their cell phone number, email address, CPF. CPF is like as a social number. And then you have 2 random keys. In my first think, hey, if the guy not use OPSEC, it's possible this guy used the same phone number for creating a bank account. Okay, I test. For my surprise, the guy created the account banking and related the same phone number, and they exposed just a banking. Here, the name, the guy. Here, the social number. Okay. For Brazilian compliance, in Brazilian as a LGPD, like as a GDPR, obfuscated the 3 first numbers and the 2 last numbers, the social number. But if you have a 6 middle number, it's possible to identify the guys in many data breaches. Okay, I get this number, checking data breach, this is all data related to this guy. Address, full name, date of birth, mother, all phones, all emails, all employees, anything. Social medias, that's good. The second case, I think in the second threat actor, this threat actor selling the scam for removing 2FA authentication in the banks in Brazil. For example, is cases many common if you're stolen the cell phone, the guy removed 2 second factor authentication and enable 2 factor authentication in another device for access the account banking and then movement all transactions. The same social engineer, hey, it's working. I have a big database contain the social number, CPF, and then password. Almost 50-15 business. I send my database. If you remove 2FA authentication, all financial obtained scam splitting between me and 2. The guy, okay. Oh, I send it to you my database, okay? Another web bug or IP tracker, if for my surprise, again, the IP address, providers, user agencies, and the phone number, phone model in the last column. If this IP is a VPN, proxies, what do you do? Nothing. It's a clear IP address. Okay. Okay. I think all guys is losers or noobs. Okay. I simplify my research. Just to create the fake database involved the credential database, a fake creation, faking another database related to the credit card numbers, and distribute 2 links in the many groups. Hey, just a free database credential for use, for us, and then free database for credit card for us, okay? And for my surprise again, and many guys click in the link and they collect all information. The all IP address collected, 92% not have anything OPSEC involved, just a clear IP. Then 5% using VPN and 3% using host. Host, the guy using the cloud computer instance, Amazon, Google Cloud, anything, for access the Telegram or WhatsApp web, okay? But then 0 guys using proxies or Tor, okay? So good, for investigators, better scenario. But then I think if just Brazilian scenario, another crowd is the same or as different. Okay, send the same link for groups involved in Latin, not included the Brazilian groups, the WhatsApp, Telegram, and Discord. In result is more or less similar between difference because the Latin using 680, not using anything OPSEC, just a clear IP. They using VPN increasing for 31% guys using VPN for OPSEC. This is important information because then I think what threat actors, Brazilian threat actors do not use OPSEC because it's not having worry for jail or just common or not using for not know the OPSEC method. Okay, I send many links. I separate two interesting cases. This guy clicking the link, but if you check the jail IP address, jail IP point to Paris, but this guy do not permit just collecting the IP address, but collecting the GPS coordinate. It's good again. But if you check the GPS coordinate, point to customer thing, what guys live in, stay in the customer thing or Paris? If I check the IP address relating the VPN provider. In this case, it's possible that the guy using a VPN for access the link, the VPN node in the Paris, but the real location the guy is in customer thing, okay? Okay, the Oscar goes for this guy. This guy permit collecting, not just in collecting the GPS coordinate, but collect the selfie. For law enforcement, it's very good. You have the IP address, you have a geolocation, you have a cell phone model, you have the selfie the guy. That's it. And the next day morning, hello. It's a good. It's not a unique guy. I have him more or less 15 guys using the permit to collect the GPS and collect the self. I have many books of self-threat actors, Brazilian. But what points of the research? In 2 hours, collected 257 unique IPs, and 7 using the VPN, 80 using cloud host or like as VPS, 0 using proxies or Tor. I not identify principal difference the TTP between the threat actors. The malware developer, phishing developer, the fraud guy is using the same method for TTPs, the same OPSEC method. And the scenario repeat between the platform. The guy using the same OPSEC method in the WhatsApp, Telegram, and Discord. Okay. The most concentrated IP address collected concentrated in the highest economic concentration. In Brazil, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Brazilian, Porto Alegre is 4 states concentrated the economy in Brazil. Okay. But what the recommendations? So the lesson for all threat actors professional because I need if the guy fail in the OPSEC, the cyber threat intelligence analysis is possible fail in the same problem. Working in the cyber threat intelligence always validate all aspects involved in the OPSEC. if you have a DNS leak, if you using VPN, if your VPN do not leak a real IP or leaking the real user agent, because another guy is not a kid. Today, the threat actors in Brazil is a crime organization. The financial lost in the word. The financial money obtained the frauds, movement the drugs, guns, people's trafficking, and many other problems. Yes, I don't have a gun in my house, but the guy has a gun. If the guy get my real IP address, creating a real threat for my person. OPSEC is a very important for all CTI professionals. The second lesson, one small flaw compromises, in many cases, entire investigation, because if one unique opportunity is lost. And the third eating, return first, and then again, infinite looping. That's I need, in all cases, I need to validate all aspects in the OPSEC. For law enforcement, it's a good, because then, if the law enforcement little dedication for apply the same techniques, it's possible to obtain the good results, because the threat actors they're not using or not preoccupied to hide the tracks or traces in the cyberspace. In many cases, the threat actors having the same fails, same problems. For example, the guy used VPN but permitted the self and permitted to collect the GPS coordinate. Hey, you do not use the OPSEC correctly, okay? In Brazil, I have many problems collecting. For example, if I need to identify one guy, the policy send the IP address for telco, and the telco in many cases return the data related to the IP address in more or less 6 months. 6 months, the guy is lost. Another country, another part of the world. Then I think just the same strategy is possible working for mapped cyber predators, because the cyber predators, I try with another experiment, cyber predators do not preoccupy in the many cases in the OPSEC, and then permitted to collect the GPS, collect the selfie. It's a good, because there's a big problem in all the world, okay? For finish, almost some actors in concert about OPSEC, Brazilian scenarios impunity. For example, if the guy going to jail, this guy is stay in the jail for 1 or 3 months. It's not a problem, because using 3 months for PAG, create a new fraud scam, creating a new technique, is anything. So just a research period, okay? If your first time in the jail, you don't need any time. Just you go in the policy, signing the document, and okay, you're free. Okay, Brazilian is very mental. That's it, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, Tiago, that was amazing. First presentation in English.
Oh,
Wow,
thanks.
just so good, so good. And opportunities to be cyber criminals in Brazil apparently are available. Don't do that, though. That's illegal. That's for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If you want to, will you be around if people have got questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool. So if you, if we can grab the next speaker. Who's my next speaker? Can I get a yep, thumbs up. All right, we are live on the internet, live from Las Vegas. All right, go quick, Sam. Right, good morning / afternoon. Welcome to BSides Las Vegas track name, which is Proving Ground right now. This talk is not on my phone. Hang on a second. It is Shining a Light into the Security Black Hole of IoT and OT. This is Huxley. Please give a big round of applause. Real quick, I've got to thank the sponsors because they give us money, right? All right, quick, thank the sponsors. Diamond sponsor, Adobe. Woo! Gold sponsors, choose 3. Prismacloud, 7grep, Blue Cat, Prextrack, Toyota, Conductor One. It's their support that helps it all happen. Thank you if you're a sponsor, a donor, or a volunteer. You're amazing. Huxley, over to you, my friend. Let's go.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so hi everybody. My name is Huxley Barbie. I'm the only Huxley Barbie you're ever going to meet. And I am the lead organizer for BSides New York City. Really happy to be here with the mothership, BSides Las Vegas. Really excited about that. And I'm also the security evangelist at Run Zero. But more relevant to this talk, I've had a long career as a security consultant. And most of my clients had just IT environments, but many of them, more than a few, have had OT environments as well. And specifically, I have had customers in manufacturing, transportation, and higher education, all of which often have OT environments. So these environments include a lot of factory devices or bus or rail station equipment, campus facilities, and so on and so forth. So much of what we're going to discuss here today falls under the category of critical infrastructure and key resources in the United States. By the end of this talk, I hope that you will, one, know more about OT than you did before. You have a few pointers on where to go to do your own security research on critical infrastructure. You have understanding of the challenges of scanning OT networks when you're trying to satisfy CIS control number 1, and have a few ideas on how to overcome these challenges. Also, I'm giving out cash as part of this. Very exciting. All right, so when we think of compute, we often think about laptops, servers, and databases, and this is what we would call IT devices. But this only represents a small percentage of devices, chips that are manufactured. I saw this one statistic that says 90% of chips that are manufactured go into embedded devices, IoT and OT devices. So it's a much larger landscape outside of IT. Some of these embedded devices are IoT devices, which have a huge variety, right? We often like to joke that these days even like a coffee mug is on the internet, right? So that would be an IoT device. But it also includes like run-of-the-mill stuff like printers, IP cameras, home automation, like your Nest and whatever, as well as even power supplies. Some of these embedded devices are known as OT devices, operational technology devices, which operate our factories, our water treatment facilities, recycling plants, oil refineries, gas pipelines, all sorts of areas that are called CIKR, critical infrastructure and key resources. Now, 2 points of clarification here. In this talk, I'm using the term OT. You can think of it as synonymous with ICS, industrial control systems. The second point of clarification is you'll notice there on the lower right, I have a medical device. Oftentimes people call this IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, but with the role that IOMT plays and its usage pattern, it actually fits under the OT category a lot better. All right, so obviously in this talk I'm focusing on OT and some on IoT. Most of us are not familiar with OT, so I'm going to go over that first, and then I will talk about how really it's not even a challenge to go on the offense against OT environments. I'll briefly touch on what other people do for scanning, defensive scanning, and then I will talk about the novel idea in this presentation, which is active scanning in OT environments, and then finally we'll take a look at what this means for the IoT side. So, even though many of our OT environments are considered critical infrastructure, they are shockingly unprotected. But what do I mean by an OT device? So let's take a look at that first. There's actually a huge variety in OT environments. It's not like IT where most folks have a stock PC, or a Mac with modular components. Rather, there are a lot of devices that are specially designed for a specific purpose. Only can be used in an electrical plant, only can be used in this factory, and so on and so forth. I'm going to walk through an example with you to show you what I mean by OT, but just keep in mind there's a lot of variety in OT environments, okay? So what we have here is a water treatment tank. The contaminated water comes up from the lower left and then goes into the tank and then comes out the right pipe over there. What you see here are 2 different sensors that are attached to the right side of the tank. So when the water is below the lower one, the right valve closes, the left pump pumps, and so the dirty water comes in. And then when the water reaches higher than the higher sensor, the left pump stops, and then the right valve opens up and then drains out the cleaned water after like an hour of just like sitting there for the treatment. The pumps and the valves are called actuators. Although out in the field, you might find these to be integrated, so an integrated actuator and sensor. Again, there's a lot of variety in OT environments. The brains of this operation is known as a PLC, Programmable Logic Controller. And again, lots of variety in OT environments. In an electrical plant, you might have an IED instead, which stands for Intelligent Electrical Device. There's an HMI, a Human Management Interface. This is the panel that a technician would use to adjust the behavior of that PLC. Think of the HMI not as a computer, but more like a keypad of sorts, like a thermostat in your house. That's really an HMI. It's meant for like that level of technician to operate. It's definitely very locked down. PLCs are programmed with an engineer's workstation. This actually is a PC, although what you often find is they will be running things like Windows XP, old operating systems. Apparently, I was talking to somebody where he found like Windows 3.1 on a particular like engineer station. So this is one system, okay? And at a site, you might find multiple of these systems all coordinating with each other through what is known as a DCS, Distributed Control System. On the other hand, you might also have a deployment where these OT systems are spread out over a large geographic region, and that is organized into what is known as a SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Access. With SCADAs, you might actually have an RTU, which allows you to relay between the PLC back to some sort of centralized control center at the headquarters. All right, so this is a quick tour of how a small part of an OT environment might look like. So now let's take a look at what it means to secure OT environments and how that's different from securing IT environments. In IT, we are concerned with the movement of data, but in OT, you're concerned with the movement of widgets and gears and cogs and things like that, moving of stuff, machinery. IT vendors will release products with planned obsolescence, right? So all of you have phones and laptops which are probably no more than 3 to 5 years old. On the OT side, these devices just sit there pretty much forever in internet time. Yep. All right, here's the first question where I'm giving away money. What is commonly thought of as the triad of major concerns for any security program?
Availability, integrity, confidentiality.
There you go. That's yours. All right. So, conventional wisdom in our industry says that these are the pillars of concern. Now, arguably on the IT side, confidentiality tends to rise to the fore, right? Most companies on the IT, like an e-commerce site, they don't get sued if their e-commerce site goes down. They just lose a little bit of money. But if they lose PII, then of course, they're going to be investigated, they're going to be sued, and there's reputation loss, and so on and so forth. On the OT side, though, availability is absolutely paramount. They will do everything and anything to avoid an outage, right? Now, let's talk about why this is important. For a commercial organization, loss of availability means loss of revenue, right? Your cars are not being built in your factory, the gas is not flowing, and so on and so forth. But also, for many of these critical infrastructure and key resources, they're regulated by the government, right? So for example, Colonial Pipeline was fined $1 million by FSMA because of an outage, right? So when they are not able to deliver that availability, they can be fined by the government, right? If it's not a commercial organization, but like a governmental or a quasi-governmental organization, what you have is a politician that doesn't want the bad press of that particular service, municipal service, going down, and so on and so forth. For one or these other reasons, availability is far more important with that CIA triad. Nearly all of IT devices run on one of these operating systems, and they're all time-sharing operating systems. But on the OT side, there's far more variety of operating systems that are often real-time operating systems instead, which has real implications or ramifications for what happens when you contact it over the network and what it might do. OT devices are programmed in languages that I had never heard of before I started digging into this, right? Ladder diagram, I have to read this out, function block diagram, sequential function chart, and so on and so forth. OT devices are almost never updated or patched. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Availability is the most important thing for these organizations. They will do everything and anything to avoid an outage. So they don't want to shut down for patching. They also want to avoid any potential extended downtime due to a bad upgrade or a bad update. Now, you might laugh here that I'm saying like IT secure by design, but relative to the OT side, yes, IT is secure by design. On the OT side though, like there's pretty much nothing, right? The moment you have access to a PLC, you will have access to actuators and sensors and be able to modify its behavior, right? Many of these OT devices do not require authentication. Many of them are talking plain text over the network. There's no encryption and so on and so forth. And frequently, there's no governance in these organizations to remediate default users, default passwords, as well as default settings. Basically, once you get access, you own everything. IT devices these days tend to have a lot of endpoint protection, or there's, they're being scanned by vuln scanners, and even the network itself has some sort of network level protection. In OT, some of the industries have started introducing controls and making great improvements, but in many industries, there just still are no security controls at all. Traditionally, IT devices have had some connection to the internet, but oftentimes OT environments were air-gapped. They were air-gapped, which explains a lot of what I've said so far, right? Security through isolation, right? Not security through obscurity, but security through isolation. So oftentimes people thought it was okay for OT devices to not have so much protection, just because in order for you to compromise that OT device, you kind of had to walk up to it to do something to it. Now, traditionally, OT networks have had their own protocols, but, so this is the kicker here. Starting around 2005, in order to be more operationally efficient, a lot of these organizations started connecting their OT networks to the internet so they could do remote management and things like that. So think about it this way. If I have a valve on a pipeline out in the middle of Wyoming that needs to be adjusted, it's so much easier if I could just, do that over the network as opposed to flying somebody out there in order to just, to turn the valve, right? So for operational efficiency, this started happening. But up to now, up to 2005, security through isolation was the thing. And so that sort of curtain of air-gappedness sort of came down, and then that sort of exposed all these other problems that I mentioned so far. All right, here's the next question. What is the name of this model shown in this picture?
View diagram.
Yes, that's it. Somebody pass that over. Okay. So this is the Purdue model. It shows an ideal model of an OT network, or what it should look like, where there's different levels of risk and controls that are stratified for the sake of security. And you'll see here sensors and actuators are down at the bottom, field devices as they're called, right? And layer 1, you got the PLC, layer 2 and 3, you have the HMI and so on and so forth. Now what's supposed to happen here is between each layer, there's supposed to be some sort of security control that adjudicates communication between those layers. The other thing that's supposed to happen is you should only be communicating with your adjacent layer. You should not be going from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. You can only go from 1 to 0 or 1 to 2. Right? The other thing that you want to note here is the higher layers are very IT-ish, and the further down you go, the more OT it gets. Okay? The other thing to note is the lower you go, the fewer security protections you have. You're going to find more security protection at the top. So what this means is, if you're going to make your way and infiltrate into the top, it gets easier and easier for you to get down to the bottom. Right? So once you're in layer 5, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. It's just a matter of time before the adversary can get down to layer 0. So sounds easy, right? Well, what if I told you it's actually a lot easier than that? Right? So in this scenario, I said you get into layer 5, you work your way down to layer 1 and 0, right? But what if you could skip through all those layers and just go right to layer 1 over the internet? Wouldn't that be easier, right? Yeah, answer is yes, it is easier. So remember what I said, actually I don't know if I mentioned this, but no organization actually truly implements Purdue. That is an ideal model that most organizations do not live up to. And so we have an example here of what is supposed to be layer 1 in Purdue, a PLC, that is directly connected to the internet. So you can skip 5 through 2 and just go right to layer 1. So now you might be thinking, well, Huxley, okay, fine, it's on the internet, but like, how do I log into this device, right, to the web interface on that device? Well, you know, what you might want to do, aside from using Shodan, of course, is you could just go on Google to find this PLC, as I mentioned. But if you want to log into it, what would you do? Well, you just go on the internet as well, and you go and find the usernames and passwords. Remember what I mentioned before. Most organizations don't have the security governance to remediate default users, default passwords, and default settings, which means what you're going to find on GitHub is probably going to work, at least some of the time. Okay? It's all there. Here's another organization, Skato Strangelove. They're an independent group of security researchers. They also publish this type of information. So it's all there, and you don't have to try very hard to find them. Now, what if you have a situation where that particular device has been remediated such that it doesn't have default passwords, right? So maybe this organization did a little bit of governance on these things, and you can't just like go find the default password and just log in. Well, remember how I said earlier that OT devices are almost never updated or patched? So what you would do then, in this case, if you can't just log in with a default password, is head over to CISA's website and find a vulnerability to exploit, right? They've basically given you a roadmap of things that you can try out. Because most of these devices are not patched, more than likely, some of these vulnerabilities are going to work, even if that device was deployed 20 or 30 years ago. And so now you might be thinking, okay, I see that, you know, I can probably have some success with default usernames and passwords, and if not, I have like a vulnerability that I can probably exploit. But you might be thinking, okay, OT devices are so different from IT. Like, do I need different tooling to exploit these vulnerabilities? Well, the answer is no, because with current tooling, there are modules that you can use to go ahead and exploit those vulnerabilities. I hope that I have impressed upon you that there's a real problem here with our critical infrastructure and key resources. Some of you might be thinking, you know, I'm going to go back and take a look at my plan for going off the grid, because who knows, right? But the fact of the matter is, any organization with an OT environment should have a hard look at it. And I was being a little cynical earlier by saying, like, oh, the only reason that people care about availability is because, you know, they're going to lose money, or they're going to be fined, or it's going to be bad press. But that in no way discounts the importance of availability with OT devices, because many of our lives depend on water and electricity. We depend on electricity here in the city, for sure. Pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. Like, so this is really important that all of our organizations that have OT environments to take a look at this, because our lives depend on it. And arguably, one of the first things you would do if you're protecting an OT environment is to figure out what you have, right? Many organizations in the past have tried using scanners like Nessus or an Nmap to figure out what they have, which unfortunately resulted in major financial loss or major outages. These tend to not be published for obvious reasons, but I'm sure you, speaking with your friends or others, might have heard about such a things. And for this reason, security teams tend to use a passive network monitor, sniffing for traffic with a tap or a spam port to figure out what's on the network, which is fine as long as you can access enough choke points on the network. But let's take a look at this more closely. Right? Suppose here you have a SCADA system that is spread across multiple sites, and all the communication at these various branches are backhauled to the headquarters. Well, in this case, you know, you will have access to most of the core distribution switches at the headquarters, and so therefore you can see all the traffic for the devices that communicate inter-site, right? But now consider this scenario, right, where the site-to-site communication is not backhauled through a central location, but instead they can have peer-to-peer communication among these sites. Well, this is operationally efficient, right? And for these sites to be able to talk to each other, they can be more operationally efficient. So obviously, organizations are going to do this, but it makes it much, much harder for you to get enough choke points to figure out what are all the things that are talking on the network. And if you have hundreds of sites, I guarantee you that's impossible for you to get some sort of comprehensive asset inventory. So by sticking with a passive network monitor solution instead of active scanning, security teams are inviting these issues, right? Not only do they get an inventory that has gaps, but it's complicated to deploy. If you ever tried setting up spam ports at scale, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And in order for you to collect all that network traffic, you need to have these big, beefy hardware appliances, right? So just deployment-wise, it is complicated, and you get poor performance unless you spend the money. And what do you get for all that? You get an inventory that has poor fingerprinting and has a lot of gaps in it. It's not getting all the devices. And the fingerprinting tends to be poor simply because the only thing that you have for fingerprinting is what's going over the wire. And so if a particular device is not very chatty, it's not giving itself up, then the fingerprinting tends to be vague or even incorrect. So let's dig into the reasons why active scanning has failed in the past. Like, so why is it that there were all these outages when people tried to actively scan the network? And based on this sort of look at that, we will come up with the 5 principles of active scanning in OT. And here is the next question. Packet 2053. What do we call that? Like, what is it? It has a name that's named after a holiday. The interesting thing about 2053 is that the fin bit is on, the push bit is on. No, he raised his hand.
Christmas tree.
All right, there you go. You got it. Can you pass that? All right, so scanners like Nmap and Nessus, they intentionally use non-standard packets or unexpected payloads for fingerprinting purposes, right? So they'll jostle that device, so to speak, to see what the response is, and based on that response, they're like, aha, like you're that thing, right? This Christmas packet here is a non-standard packet, right? It's not something you would normally see, and depending on the network stack of that device, it might handle it, it might not handle it. What is often the case with OT devices is they will not handle it, and they will crash, or they will reboot, or they will freeze up, right? Causing that outage. Now, the same is true when you move up above the network stack. You're looking at the application itself. Like application payloads also have this issue where they will freeze up or crash and so on and so forth. The thing is, programming in IT has benefited from decades of innovation in terms of like release engineering, SDLC, quality assurance and things like this. But you don't have that in an OT. With OT, the quality assurance is like, oh, this thing properly responds to somebody pushing a button or flipping a switch. Not, oh, we can handle arbitrary network traffic. That is completely unexpected, right? Also, like input checking, I think is not a thing in OT. Like it's like an IT thing, but like IT applications, yes. OT, I really don't think they do any of that. All right, number 2 here is vulnerability scanners will send security probes to detect vulnerabilities, and by its very nature, this is unexpected traffic for an OT device. So for the same reason as the previous slide, OT devices will oftentimes behave very erratically when it sees a security probe. All right, let's talk about heavy traffic. So legacy vulnerability and network scanners, they can potentially send lots and lots of traffic on the network to a particular endpoint. Some OT equipment cannot handle that much scan traffic all at once. And so when they do, and it's partly due to the fact that they're real-time operating systems, when they receive that much traffic, they will get slowdowns or they'll freeze up and things like this. But there's also the issue of the network itself, right? A lot of these network devices are not going to be able to handle heavy scan traffic as well. So in this example here, we have mission control. In the middle, you have that pipeline, and then there's like the pump over there. So that pipeline is not in an urban environment. It's actually in a remote location where they can't get FiOS, they can't get DSL. All they can do is get a modem, right? And then that pump, you can't even get a phone line out there. And so what they'll do is they'll use radio or satellite to go back to the pipeline and then piggyback over the modem in order to get back to mission control. This is not the type of network that can handle a lot of heavy scan traffic, right? And so what you want to do is you want to be able to tune your scanner in two ways, right? First is by being able to dial down the total number of packets they're going to send out there. But the other one is to be able to distribute that traffic smartly so that you are sending the least amount of traffic you need to each endpoint without having an extended scan time. So fast overall scan time, but least amount of traffic on each individual device. And number 4 here, this one is extremely important. There are some devices that will crash even if you send standards compliant traffic. They're just poorly built, poorly written, and things like this. So in this case, what you have to do is do something called incremental fingerprinting. So what you do is you send a super benign query to that device, and you sort of like understand the shape of it, just like high level, like what this thing is. And then based on what you've learned, what you've fingerprinted so far about that device, then you go down this code path or that code path for the next query that you send to it. And so successively, through these iterative queries, where you're being very careful about what you're sending and not sending, you could ultimately get to a point where you actually have this device fingerprinted pretty well, but also avoiding any sort of situation where you have sent a particular query that might have crashed it. Right. And then the last principle here is right at the bottom. Don't be stupid. Go slow. Start small, and then expand out. All right, we'll move on to IoT here.
We've really got to wrap that up, I'm afraid.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna skip right over IoT. Sorry about that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I'll be out there if you have any questions. Please connect with me. Find me. All right.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry, we're already over by a lot.
Yeah.
If you could wrap that one thing in one sentence, the last bit, what would you say?
What? Oh no.
The IoT bit.
Good.
So come to hydrated? Everyone sat down. Fantastic. Are we live streaming? We are live streaming, live from New York. Not really. Should say London. All right, cool. Good morning / afternoon. It's now afternoon. I'm Sam Humphreys. I am the only thing that stands between you and this man. Right. This talk is talk titled. It's not called that. It is Building a Culture of Cybersecurity, a case study to approach enhancing risk management. I'm looking forward to this. Quick things, real quick. Thank you to our sponsors. Diamond sponsor Adobe, Gold sponsors Prisma Cloud, 7grep, Blue Cat, Plextrack, Toyota, and Conductor One. All of you are volunteering and donating and participating. Lewis Hewerman, excellent. The floor is now yours for the next 25 minutes. Big round of applause, please.
Thank you, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today to talk about one of the things that I love in this world, which is cyber risk management. I'm excited to see so many people turn out who are interested in this topic with me. A little bit about myself. I'm a submarine fast attack Navy veteran. I was a radioman there for over 10 years, one of the highlights of my career. After that, I navigated through several 3-letter government organizations, landed in commercial cybersecurity. Through that entire time, I picked up a couple famous certs, CISSP, PMP, handful of others that are kind of entry requirements, Security Plus, Network Plus, all those things. One of the things that I developed along the way is that I am a cyber nerd, but I'm also people curious. I always find it very interesting to see how people approach technology, both those who are interested in it and those who maybe feel like it's maybe beyond them a little bit, but they're still interested in it. Today, what we're going to talk about is the perception gap. The perception gap between us. First of all, let me ask, how many cybersecurity practitioners do we have in the room? Show of hands. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. How many HR professionals do we have in the room? All right, oh, did I see one? We have a tape up here she can't cross, right? It's, there's lasers. Oh, what about marketing professionals? Any marketing professionals in the room? We got one right up here, she's doing fabulous. All right, there's a tape right there with lasers. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to approach this, and we're going to think about this in the concept of what makes us as cyber professionals so pessimistic about users, their actions, the systems. Right? I walk into the grocery store, I see credit card machines, I'm thinking PCI audit, has the cashier been briefed, but the people around me are just shopping and grabbing groceries. What creates this opposing optimistic perspective about technology compared to cyber practitioners' pessimistic view? Is it because our skill set, our training, where our focus is? When you've seen the things and you know the things, all you see are the things that can exploit it? And on the other hand, what makes others so optimistic? Is it ignorance is bliss? Or is it that they see things differently? Maybe there's a middle road. Maybe there's a table of commonality that we can find. Let's dig through some things and see what we can see. The two groups we're going to talk about today are HR and marketing. Now, how do you know I'm not in marketing? How do you know? Because this is what I envision this is what I envision marketing people look like. They're all super excited at the computer. They're all pointing at the screen and they're just really, really woo. And we're wearing a Microsoft shirt and we're still happy. Woo! That's how you know. But let's take a look. So the HR department. What do we typically see in the HR department? What kind of things are they dealing with every day? PDFs? Yeah, PDFs. PDFs only from known entities? No. They're looking at job resumes, both solicited and unsolicited. They're maybe looking at legal agreements, sometimes solicited, sometimes unsolicited. They're doing all the things that make us cyber practitioners scream, oh my God. But they're like, well, I have to, that's my job. Like, what, am I not supposed to open PDFs? What else? What's some of the low-hanging fruit? Word documents, email, people's information, HR systems. People in general, yes. One of the reasons I got into cyber is because I didn't have to deal with people. Nah. One of the HR systems, typically that's 2FA at best. We're talking login and password. Not a lot of depth in those. They're getting better. That's not a criticism against HR technology. It's just the nature of IT systems today, SaaS-based, where they're logging into an HR management system and they're handling extremely sensitive information on a laptop or an endpoint device that might not be completely controlled. If I hear someone say Okta controls it, let's sidebar that one. But the point here is that the HR department is doing great things. They're also doing very dangerous things. But do they see it that way? If I go and I talk to the HR department and I say, what things are you doing that are dangerous? They're probably going to list people. We deal with sensitive information and people, and they'd be right. They probably would not list opening a PDF as one of the most dangerous things they're doing today. I might differ. Let's do a risk level check. High, medium, low. How would you rate HR in the organization? High. How many high? Okay, it's about half the room. How many medium? Okay, that's the other third. How many low? 0 lows. I generally agree with that. So we understood that HR deals with sensitive data. They've got financial information, payroll information on everyone. They've got confidential records, all the things that we understand HR has. They deal with like breathing. They have legal compliance requirements. It's not just about your personal information. They also have to comply with state, federal, and then international, if the organization expands, requirements on how they move, handle, and view data, and who can be around them when they view that information. Again, they're probably not going to list opening a PDF as the worst thing they're going to do today. This is where culture comes in. Can we work with the HR department and identify what sensitive data is and help them see some of the threats that are involved with the ways they're accessing that information at no fault of their own, just the nature of technology? Is there a table for that discussion where you're at today? And what are those questions being asked? Now that we understand the current risk level, we identify HR as a high to medium risk in the organization based on our unofficial polling here. So let's turn our eyes to the marketing department. I know, lasers. Marketing. How many marketers go to conferences and they have to meet with people? That's sort of why they're there, right? I mean, we bring marketers in, they join the cyber team. We've got great marketers out in the middle ground today doing excellent work. They might not traditionally be cyber experts, but they're familiar with the product lines, or they're cyber experts turned marketer. They went the other way. Occasionally extroverts happen in our world. It does occasionally occur. And so meetups are going to happen. In this instance, a marketer was contacted to meet up for lunch by supposedly a foreign CEO of a startup. Let's do a risk level check. High, medium, low. How many for high? Okay. About 5% of the room. How many medium? Okay. About most of the room. And how many low? Okay. Got 1, 2. So this is sitting in the medium range for risk. What happens next? Oh, I'll send you an email. Let's meet up for lunch. Emails happen every day by the millions and the billions. And if you're in my inbox, by the thousands. It's a lot, right? Either marketing or otherwise. So they get an email. How many times has someone here, show of hands, got an email with an attachment that just looks very innocuous, but it turns out to basically be the images and the signature? Right? Yeah. I've worked with organizations who actually require that you not put an image in your signature because that happens and because it can trick people into opening it. I endorse that approach. The body contains a base 64 blob. The person, maybe not knowing, thinks it's their image, tries to open it. What happens next? Bad things. It's called bad day. Some of the possibilities. This is just the normal, imperfect interoperability between Gmail and Outlook, sometimes Yahoo and Gmail. These more text-based email agents sending things that don't translate the image, and so it attaches it. So far, we're within the realm of normal for a marketing person. Culture comes in by the marketing person saying, this seems weird, but we're not there yet. Next up, the person says, hey, I'm down here in the lobby. Gonna meet up. Well, wait a minute, now they're trying to move outside of it. Well, I'm outside now. What does this sound like to the cyber folks in the room? They're being lured out. What I call getting off campus. Getting lured off campus, outside of the comfort zone, to again, get that information from you little bit by little bit by little bit. Let's do a quick risk level check. How many people now are at high? Okay, about a quarter of the room. How many people are still at medium? Okay, how many people are low? So everybody shifted up a level, by and large. Because now, in our cyber brains, all the hairs in our back are just tingling. All of this sounds odd to us. To our resident marketing expert in the room, your risk level, is this high, medium, or low, or is this pretty standard fare?
I mean, it happens, right? It does a lot. This is now the ordinary. Do I trust anyone? No.
That's right. So far, to our marketing person, this happens all the time. Her objective is to meet and greet, produce information, share information. So from her perspective, the risk, very, very low to medium, a little stranger danger, but that has more to do with meeting a stranger than any technical implications. Well, that's culture versus phishing. Have we aligned with the marketing department to understand what things could go wrong, to share with them the things that we see? And did we work with them to understand their perspective of why this is every day for them? There's no way to not do things this way. The same as our HR reps. There's no way for them not to do things that way. So what's left? Our culture. A culture of saying, I know this seems weird, but there might be a more secure way of doing it, and I'm going to reach out to the cyber nerds and see if this triggers them in any way. Just to do a pulse check. What do we need for that conversation to occur? Alignment. A table that they feel good and open to come and discuss these things that they have questions about. If the culture is not built around one where we as the cyber folks are so pessimistic that we put up walls, users are dumb, they don't know anything, they don't understand technology, how can they possibly be trusted? If we put up those kinds of cultural walls, that's not inviting to the folks who may have simple questions. That's where culture versus phishing. How do we encourage the marketing folks to only use official channels for communication, to track and accountability of these conversations? How do we teach them how to verify profiles? I understand your remit is to go and meet with folks and to transfer information between the two of you. How can we be conduits for a paved pathway of safety for those conversations? And it starts with culture. Now, I fooled all of you. We've been assessing risk this entire time. Did we ever define risk levels? No. What did I give you? High, medium, and low. Did we, the cyber folks, define what high means? Did we ever define what low means? Now, I, with a certain level of confidence, know that when I'm speaking with cyber professionals and I say high, medium, and low, we all see red, yellow, green. Do the non-cyber folks know what that means? Do they define it in the same way we do? And how can we correct or assure that that interpretation is equal? Engineering departments have the same challenge with cyber departments. What's high for them is not necessarily high for us. What's low for them, the house is on fire, right? We can't call enough fire engines to some of the lows I've seen engineering departments deal with. They're like, oh, no, that's not a big problem. I'm over here freaking out. So what do we do now? We can mitigate some of the HR risk, strict access controls, private VLANs, training, having that discussion, inviting them to the table. Exclusionary discussions exclude. Open that door, create cyber champions in the HR department. How do we mitigate it? And marketing, same thing. Identify and verify, show them how to assess the risk from a cyber perspective. And then we, the cyber people, understand that for a marketing person, they have to enter these dangerous situations, technically speaking. How can they do these dangerous things safely? But to do that, our culture has to be inviting and open up the table of discussion. Where do we go from here? Let's revisit that gap perception. We've got the cyber SMEs pessimistic. The world, me going into a grocery store, risk, aisle 9, risk. Everyone else just shopping for groceries. And how do we get the folks who, oh, every day is a picking flowers day, and get them to see, like, maybe there's some snakes in that grass that they're not aware of, and help them align their measurement of risk with our measurement of risk, high, medium, and low, but also maybe teach us something about what they have to deal with day to day. Cultivating a culture of cybersecurity risk awareness should extend beyond the technical teams. It's about empowering everyone with the knowledge and skills to protect themselves and the organization. It might not be our fault if something happens, but it is our problem. And it's also our duty to empower everyone in the organization to appreciate how cyber risk can both empower and also hurt us if not handled properly. Hopefully, you can all go back with this message to your cultures and see how you're inviting those folks to the table. I'd love to open up to any questions.
Thank you. That was great. Really, really good. Does anyone have a question? We've got probably time for one. Or none. Also fine.
She made me speed round that. She was like 2 minutes. No, that's great.
Got them.
Marketing.
How do you define the risk levels to bridge the gap?
Well, how do I heard two questions. One, how do I define the risk level, and how do I bridge the gap? So I define risk levels specifically based on the organization, because what I consider high, they might not consider high. So step one is understanding the organization. What's important to them? What do they think is at risk? What can impact their ability to make money? At the end of the day, every business is there for that reason. We need to identify the crown jewels or the things that might impact their ability to make money. Two, how do I bridge the gap? Identify who the key relationships are that might help or hinder the mitigation of risk. And that's through relationship management. You know, you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar. If we run around like the fear police, that might instigate short-term gains, but it doesn't create a positive culture around cyber. We don't need to be the no police, and we don't need to be, you know, we don't even no, 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 right? That's not us. We're there to empower. It's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question indeed. Right, everyone, please, big round of applause. Alrighty. Well, bye from me now as well. So I think it's lunchtime or beer time or whatever you do at this time of day normally. Just be yourselves. Be safe out there. That was awesome.